Good morning. Good morning. My name is Russell Galt, and I work for the IUCN Urban Alliance, the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And it's my pleasure and privilege to moderate today's GrowGreen webinar with the theme Involving Citizens in Urban Nature-Based Solutions Strategies. And this is, of course, part of the GrowGreen project, an EU-funded Horizon 2020 project that seeks to create more climate resilient, water resilient, healthy, livable cities, cities that are sustainable through the investment in nature-based solutions. By making nature part of the built environment, we can improve quality of life for all citizens whilst actually helping businesses to prosper, exacting tremendous economic gains. High quality green spaces and waterways, blue and green infrastructure provides innovative and inspiring solutions to some of the most pressing urban challenges. Trees mop up air pollutants, dampen noise pollution, and beautify urban spaces. Wetlands and rain gardens absorb storm flow during and after periods of heavy rainfall, thereby reducing flood risk. There are many, many benefits, multifarious benefits that we can exact from nature-based solutions. They are cost-effective, they are elegant, and they generate benefits for all. Win, win, win. So today, we're looking specifically at how to engage citizens, the people who live in the communities affected, how to engage them in the process of designing and deploying nature-based solutions to foster a sense of shared ownership and acceptance, to also improve the design and deployment of nature-based solutions and the management of them, because we have seen time and time again across Europe and beyond that involving citizens in decision-making greatly enhances the quality of those decisions and indeed the acceptance of those decisions. So today we have an action-packed agenda drawing on many of the shining lights across Europe. And just perhaps before we delve into the agenda, let me just share a few housekeeping rules. Firstly, we will record the event. We are recording the event. I hope that's all right. This is to publish it later on the GrowGreen website. And also there will be a web story summarizing the proceedings today. If you have any questions, please do drop them, not in the chat box, but in the dedicated Q&A box, which is hopefully on the rightmost side of your screen. And they will be addressed either in real time by the presenters in the form of text, or if we don't manage to address them during the first hour, we will get to them, I'm sure, in the question and answer session towards the end. This is, of course, 2 hours long in total. The first hour will be consumed by presentations. We have a wealth of experiences on offer today. And then the second hour, or 45 minutes, will be consumed by rich, engaging discussions. I, for one, am very excited to hear the contributions of all the panelists. So first up, we have from, and I hope I pronounced this correctly, Iñaki Romero Fernandez de la Ria, who is an architect and urban planner. And he is representing Paisaje Transversal, which is an urban planning and urban innovation office based in Spain, in Valencia, I believe. And it promotes, coordinates, designs, and advises processes of urban transformation and analysis from citizen engagement, ecology, and creativity, always adapted to the local reality. So Iñaki, I believe you're very well placed to contribute to today's webinar. Over to you. Yeah. And I believe that my colleagues, I just want to firstly pay tribute to my two colleagues, Julia and Barbara, who are undertaking much of the logistical work today and will be sharing the slides. And if you have any technical challenges, please do send them a message in the chat box. Thank you, Iñaki.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. I will share my screen. Yeah. I hope you can see my presentation. Yes.
Yes.
So good morning to everybody, and thank you very much to the UCN team for organizing and inviting us to this interesting webinar. I will try to be concise, to spend my just 8 minutes. And I hope you will enjoy this presentation. Well, as Russell said, our office, Paisaje Transversal, is an urban planning office, and we arrived to this GrowGreen project when it has already started. So we have to adapt our vision to the project situation in that moment. As Chantal has asked to explain, we have helped all the cities in GrowGreen project to develop their citizen engagement. They all develop their own citizen engagement and their own work with the communities, but we have tried to help them through two simple tools or methodologies we usually use. One of these methodologies is listen and transform the city, which structures any process through cyclical actions, repeating the cycle and as many times as necessary. We collect information and opinions, that's listening. We design and implement the projects, that's transform, and then we evaluate the results to redesign the changes and go on with this cycle. We also use another tool called Doing Cities with People, which requires that in every phase of the project, several actions must be delivered related with each of these three components. That is dissemination, that's citizenry, and participation. And this using these different components in all the phases ensures a transparent, qualified, and a collaborative process. Landing to the project in Valencia with the citizen engagement we developed, we thought that before asking people directly about the pilot projects, about the projects that we wanted to develop in the neighborhood, in this case in Benicalap neighborhood in Valencia, here in Spain, we found necessary to think together with the community about the connection with the orchard. The orchard is this green area surrounding the city and surrounding Benicalap neighborhood. And we thought that it was very important to think about the big scale, that is the connection with the orchard, to ask people also about the qualification of all the public space they have in the neighborhood. That was something they need, and they had big problems in their public space. And also working, as I said, in the pilot projects, in this co-design of the pilot projects. So we had a three scales approach during all the process. So we have a big picture of the situation of the neighborhood. So during the 6 months prior to the pilot project's design definition, we developed several multidimensional actions to engage community, to inform community, and to design collaboratively with the community. And all these three areas, the information, engagement, and the collaborative design, were developed through several actions, as we will see now. We we developed a web and a digital questionnaire. We also created physical questionnaires for other people, developed in the municipal facilities, in all the buildings, public buildings we have in the neighborhood. We created some informative panels, mailboxes, presentations in different facilities of the neighborhood. We create several interviews with stakeholders were also developed and organized. We create these questionnaires I told you, and we also have some civic streets agents, some people working in the streets, talking with the non-structured citizen associations, with the people that is just in the street enjoying their place. We make with them some questionnaires and some perceptive maps. That means we work over the maps and the idea of what they have about the neighborhood. We also created and developed a great workshop with over 60 attendees, where we have a big map where they can walk about what they think they need in the neighborhood and the public space. And we split in several groups, so we could work directly also in the pilot projects and change some of the ideas. As you see, what we try to do, also we have these two workshops with elder people and with gender workshop that were very interesting and very successful for different groups of people that normally don't participate. And we also work with some schools and high schools. So we work with them about how they understand the environment, about how they understand the green infrastructure, and trying to make them know what the nature-based solutions are. The idea is that as many channels as we use, that makes better and wider, more shared the process. So the first thing I have to convince you is that you have to use a lot of channels to get many different people in your process. Some of the results we achieved with this process are this visibility and interest about the project in the neighborhood. They didn't know that what was happening there, and we collect a lot of ideas and we create collaboratively the development of these proposals that make the community understand what's happening there, and they could incorporate their own vision to the projects. The process has influenced the pilot projects in several ways. And first of all, enhancing the connection of Benicalap with the orchard. We make that the pilot projects had into account this important idea that the people from the neighborhood, the community, was asking for. We also could improve some of the most degraded spaces in the Ciudad Fallera. In Ciudad Fallera is part of Benicalap, in this small part of the neighborhood, where some of the spaces that that the community asked us to improve were not included in the GrowGreen projects, and we tried to make them possible and to incorporate them. And also daily in the results in the pilot projects, we changed the place where the vertical ecosystem was implemented. We tried to ask people where they think it would have a more impact, and so the location of the vertical ecosystem changed to the school. We also have in the sustainable forest, we could give a gender perspective design to the paths, to the lighting, and in general to all the design. And we also could improve some a main square of the neighborhood and a very demanded area in the neighborhood to incorporate them in this green blue corridor that we are in this moment developing. To conclude with the actions, I wanted to also to explain you that an undefined open call that the project had before, we could redirect it to a green collaborative initiative, open call, focusing the community. So we could redirect some of the budget to community needs and to community projects that they could by their own develop. So 7 projects have been developed by citizens with a really positive environmental impact, but I wanted to explain you 2 of them that has created a really high social impact. This is the Spy Bear Benicalap, or the Green Space Benicalap, where the community has implemented a new green garden and a civic space, transforming an empty plot by themselves. It's a self-managed project. This includes a community garden. This is the community garden that the different associations of the neighborhood are enjoying now, and they are also working in a civic center for the city and for the space. So they are building the community by themselves are building this civic center that will be a place to join people, to have some information and to have some pedagogical actions about environment. And yes, to finalize, I just want to tell you that it's very important to keep people linked to the project during all the process, to build these NBS solutions collaboratively, so we can, so the community can understand these solutions as shared with them, and also to show and share the results, so everybody understands that everybody is aware of what is happening in the neighborhood and is aware of the results of the projects. So thank you very much. That's all for my part.
Excellent. Many thanks, Iñaki, for that rich presentation. And I should probably just flag that I think at least the vertical ecosystem case study that you mentioned is included in the GrowGreen report. I believe my colleague Julia has posted it into the chat box. So for those of you who are interested, please do visit that web link, and you'll find the Green Cities Training Program report, which is a program within the GrowGreen project to train city officials. And it's called Engaging Citizens in Nature-Based Solutions. And you'll find there not just this example from, or several examples from Valencia, but also from other cities engaged in the GrowGreen project. I have some questions for you, Iñaki, but I might have to save them to the end. But just to give you a heads up, I'm very curious to know how COVID-19 influenced the sort of modalities of citizen engagement in your particular city. So maybe just park that for later, and I'm sure that can inform some interesting discussions. So let's move on now to the next speaker. We have Małgorzata Bartina Zielinska, who is the Greenery Coordinator for Nature and Climate Protection Bureau in the, I beg your pardon, in the city of Wrocław, Poland. So over to you, Małgorzata. I believe that you have already submitted your slides to Barbara, who will share them from her side. So to signal transition, just indicate next, and Barbara will do so. Looking forward to hearing your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. And first of all, I would like to congratulate Valencia on the demonstrators, because I remember how it looked before. And it was really great to see the results, even on the photos, but it looks great. So great job. As for Wrocław, as it was said before, I work for Wrocław municipality. I'm a urban planner and project coordinator, and I'm with GrowGreen since the very beginning. So it's been 4 years with the project. And next slide, please. Wrocław demonstrator looks a little bit different. We have 8 demonstrators, 7 courtyards in a densely built area, and Green Street. Next slide, please. So for the last 3 years, there have been series of meetings and workshops with citizens. We started on the site, on the courtyards. On the top half of the slide, you can see the first meetings with citizens. We wanted to tell them about nature-based solutions, what they are, how we can incorporate this solution into their courtyards. We wanted to learn how they use these courtyards, what they would like to add, what they need, how they imagine their future courtyards. So it was meeting with landscape architects, with university, with NGOs, with citizens, of course. So we just wanted to learn about the courtyards, about the citizens' needs, expectations, and we also wanted to tell them what we will do thanks to GrowGreen project. And we just wanted to cooperate and prepare first drafts of the courtyard. So it was the first series of workshops. The second series of workshops was also on the site. We presented the first drafts of the courtyards and discussed what changes should be done or improvements. And the third series of workshops was during construction time. So again, we had a series of meetings, one for each courtyard and Green Street, and we explained citizens what's been going on, when the courtyard would be finished. And the main thing was together we planted flowers, shrubs. So we wanted to incorporate citizens and make this place their own. Well, and there were several unexpected events or some different situations. For example, there was a grandchild with his grandmother. They brought their own trees actually, and they planted, and this tree still exists. So it's really nice to see how it grows. And then we had also exhibitions, meeting with district councils. So because there were plenty issues, problems we wanted to discuss and solve. And the last series of workshops was actually last year. So you can see the photos from the bottom half of the slide during COVID. This one was, well, we focused mostly on maintenance of the courtyards. We wanted to explain citizens that they can use rain barrels that were installed. They can, because on some of the courtyards there are community gardens or some herbal gardens. So we wanted to encourage citizens to use it, to take care of it, and just to show them how to use the rain barrels, because some of them, well, they didn't feel as safe with these barrels. So this was the last series of workshops. But well, we want to go further, because right now we've been working on NBS strategy. We call it action plan, and involving citizens in this type of documents. It's much harder, because one thing is involve citizens in projects or developments that are on the area they live, and involving citizens in strategic documents, it's something different. It's much harder, in my opinion. And next slide, please. So as I said before, we've been working on NBS strategy, and our strategy is part of climate change adaptation plan. And the participatory process concerning this document started in March 2019 and ended in June 2019 as well. First step, it was online survey together with first draft of the strategy. So there was very first draft of the climate change adaptation plan, together with adaptation action cards. And we wanted citizens to learn to read this document and present their first thoughts, some suggestions, some improvements. And after that, there was a series of workshops with citizens face to face. And they were divided into themes like water, greenery, energy, and so on. And together they, together with specialists, with professionals, with municipal workers, with NGOs, there were discussions about the climate change adaptation plan and the observations we have. And this observation concern most of the strategic documents. The observations are that when we are talking about municipal investments, it's easier to involve citizens, or I should say residents, in the process of participation. But when it comes to strategic documents, mostly we have local activists, NGOs, and scientists or researchers, but it's really hard to get to the citizens. And the whole participatory process, the whole participatory action was broadly advertised. There was information in local radio, TV, on website, even on, it was displayed in buses and trams, but it's really hard to reach the citizens. Next slide, please. And in creating climate change adaptation plan, there were several municipal departments involved, and I would like to focus on Wrocław Participatory Office, because Wrocław Municipality has Wrocław Participatory Office that is responsible for organizing and creating all participatory processes that are in Wrocław. So we have a procedure, generally the procedure that I discussed before. So this is the general procedure for our strategic documents. And right now, if I could have next slide, please. It's also combined with tools and education, because we believe in education. And so we also want to educate citizens on nature-based solutions, on blue-green infrastructure, and we provide them with tools, for example, good catalog of good practices. And you can see on the top right picture our city mayor, who is encouraging citizens to use this catalog of good practice on rainwater management and blue and green infrastructure. And we have several education actions and programs promoting blue-green infrastructure. For example, involving citizens and especially children. We have this program, I Like Rain, and children together with municipal workers and NGOs were creating rain gardens. And there are some other programs, as for example, Catch the Rain. So citizens can get some small amount of money, some funding from the municipality to create some rainwater management solutions in their backyards, for example, rain barrels, as you can see on the photos. So we try to join together education and participatory process. Next slide, please. And as I said before, right now we've been working on NBS action plan that is part of climate change adaptation plan. And just to be more correct, the adaptation action card that is called development of blue and green infrastructure with special reference to micro retention. And that's how we build on our action plan. And next slide, please. So because it's another next step when it comes to this document, and as I said, it evolved from climate change adaptation plan, we decided not to start with including citizens at the very beginning, because we already know what citizens need and want. So The next steps when it comes to this document, it's presenting this document at Green Table. Green Table is municipal body consisting of municipal professionals from other departments. And the other body is Wrocław Social Council for Ecology and Greenery. It's external body that is supporting our city mayor. And this one consists of external experts, scientists, researchers, and NGOs. So after presenting this document at these two meetings, we want to present, let's say, the semi-final version to citizens, and after that have a discussion with citizens and make some changes and improvements. So just to sum up my presentation, my question would be, what is your experience when it comes to involving citizens and residents in the process of creating strategic documents? Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Małgorzata. That's much appreciated, and great to hear the amazing progress that you've made over the last couple of years. Now, I'm going to turn to our panelists from Manchester who are working for Groundwork Greater Manchester. Michaela Howell, Head of Communications, and Amy Wright, Community Engagement Lead. Now, I believe that Michaela will present first and Amy thereafter on co-creation for engaging citizens, sharing lessons from Manchester. So please, over to you, Michaela.
Great, thank you, Russell, and nice to meet everybody. It's my first time at one of the GrowGreen meetings. It's great to be here. If we can move on to the slide, please, Barbara. We're going to talk to you about, and the next one, please. We're going to talk to you about Groundwork's role in GrowGreen in Manchester. And we're looking at two pieces of work. The first is one that we've been doing here in a neighbourhood in Manchester that we've been working on for a number of years. And I'm going to hand over to Amy shortly to talk about her work on that project. And then when Amy's discussed that with you, I'm going to talk about a second project, which is a Manchester City-wide piece of work, looking more strategically, which was a lovely link, thank you, looking more strategically about engaging citizens beyond their neighbourhood. So before I hand over to Amy, we've just got a short film of the work, the neighbourhood-based work in West Gorton, a small area of Manchester, which we've put together partly because of your question, Russell, about COVID and what to do in COVID times. We've had to do a lot more digital work. So we've been using lots of films like this. So it's only 3 minutes. I hope you enjoy it.
So this park is what we call a demonstration project. What we want to do in this project is provide some robust evidence to show the actual impact that green spaces have on climate change, things like flooding and heat stress, but also biodiversity, health and well-being, and just generally the cohesion within a community.
People are becoming more aware now of the need to look at sustainable issues, and climate change is becoming more real in people's lives.
This place is just crying out for somewhere for the community to meet. We've been involving the community from the outset. It's really important to involve them from the start, so they're invested in this area and they'll be the ones that are taking care of it long term and helping it be more sustainable. They are like the local people to this area, they're the local experts, and they're really the ones that know how to solve their own problems.
The initiative was part of the Horizon 2020 project to see how we can come up with some innovative design solutions which use nature-based design features rather than heavy engineering features to help combat climate change. The centre of the park, which we call the meadow, is full of wildflowers, as you can see here, and we've got trim trails and played with topography to try and capture some of the rainwater runoff and direct it into a series of swales and rain gardens. In the community area, the paving there is designed to be fully permeable so that it's attenuating heavy rainwater in those storm situations, and then it filters it through a series of formal channels into a sunken garden, a community garden, where people can sit and enjoy the planting, and the water actually irrigates the trees and the planting to create this rich sensory environment for people and for wildlife. The beauty of this particular project is that it's been monitored over a number of years by Manchester University.
The impact for green spaces and the evidence around green spaces is really quite strong. It's still early days for the science, but there's some quite clear indications that it has positive impacts in reducing negative things, but also promoting positive things. So like having more positive emotions like happiness and have a sense of meaning in life.
It looks like it's not in the middle of Manchester. You don't realise what a big impact it'll make. You sit and you think, oh no, a park, this will happen, that'll happen, and nobody's going to use it, but they do. It's worth every penny.
Micro, we don't listen to you.
Sorry, I was just saying that we're going to hand over to Amy now. Amy did the work on that particular piece of work and can talk a little bit about our approach to that and what worked.
Yeah, thank you, Michaela, and thanks to all the speakers so far as well. It's been really interesting hearing about all the different things going on across the world, so it's really fascinating. This is just a little bit more about groundwork and kind of what we want to achieve as an organisation. So we're all about creating a greener, more resilient city region with stronger, healthier communities, responsible businesses and enhanced prospects for everyone. Next slide, please. So yeah, as you'll have seen through the video, here's West Gorton. It's been through quite a transformation. So you can see kind of from before to after, we've got this beautiful large park now across 3 different sites, the woodland, meadow and community areas. To paint a bit of a picture of what the community is like, it's kind of just outside central, like inner city Manchester, and was facing kind of a number of challenges, things like high levels of poverty, issues around health and well-being, and the community was really quite divided kind of across 2 quite disparate estates that didn't really interact too much with each other. And I think there was a real kind of lack of belief that their voices could be heard. So all of this meant in the kind of initial stages there were some kind of significant barriers to engagement, but also so much potential to achieve something really great from this project. Could you go to the next slide, please? So this is just a bit of an outline of our engagement programme and kind of the steps that we went through. So firstly, working with the community to run a baseline consultation, so to really find out about kind of the challenges that they were facing, their aspirations for their community, their needs, and how we could create a park that really suited them and help them to solve kind of the problems and fulfill the potential that their community had, really. So after establishing kind of those initial that initial feedback from people, we came up with some kind of a concept design of what the park could look like, and the community were then able to feed back on that as well. So through a series of different workshops with pre-established groups, like our over 50s group. There was kind of a West Gorton youth group, and we did a lot of work with the local primary schools as well, running different sessions where they were able to kind of feed into the design process every step of the way. This then developed into a more formalised sketch, which again they could feed into, comment on, critique, and we were really able to shape the design of the park with their input. All this was supplemented with kind of ongoing activities and events, and making sure we had regular drop-ins so people were really able to feel involved every step of the way. Then of course the construction of the park and involving the community within that, I'll touch on a bit more, as well as some more kind of formal education around NBS and trying to incorporate different educational elements in the activities we were doing to help raise awareness of the value of this new park on their doorstep, and then making sure we could share learning towards the end of the project through videos like the one you've just seen. Next slide, please. So there are kind of three main strands to our engagement. So building interest and involvement is definitely really, really important at the start. Like, as I said, this was a community facing a few barriers, and there was a real need to build trust with them and build up our relationships to assure them that this park would really happen, and we really wanted to create something that would suit their needs. Yes, of course, MBS is quite a new term to a lot of people, so there was we had to really spark interest with lots of kind of visual elements, showing people what really could be and asking them to buy into a vision, as well as offering opportunities for them to share their own ideas with different design workshops and sessions with them. And again, yeah, making sure they could be included every step of the way through kind of weekly drop-ins and then ongoing updates as well. Next slide, please. Oh, the pictures have jumped around a bit, but so yeah, our second strand, after kind of building up the momentum and getting more people excited about the project, we really want to embed in this idea of co-design and ownership. So making sure we did have multiple opportunities and different methods for engaging people in the design process. So one of the pictures you can see is there's a bit of a washing line with someone kind of putting a piece of paper on the washing line. So we did kind of an activity around pants and tops, so people could feedback about their tops of what they really liked about the design and what was rubbish, and the pants they wanted to take out of it. So we just tried to kind of capture people's imagination in different ways and make our activities a bit more interactive. We also kind of wanted to directly address the concerns and queries people were raising, of course. So there was lots of feedback around potential antisocial behaviour, and we made sure that we were kind of addressing that directly in the design of the park. So as you'll have seen in the video, it's a very open, inviting space. You can kind of see from one end to the other. It does have a feeling of safety, and this was something that was really important to people. Also involving community directly in the park construction to help build on ownership. So through bulb planting events, trying to get them involved as much as possible. We also ran a naming your park competition, so people could offer up different name suggestions, and we connected people who were interested in, say, like running events or developing their own kind of mini green spaces with some local funders like Forever Manchester and through Tesco, Bags of Help to apply for funding for different projects that they could do themselves. So really trying to kind of establish more change within the wider community as well beyond the park itself. And next slide, please. So finally, this element of NBS education and awareness raising. So engaging people through practical activities was really important. So not necessarily leading with the NBS conversation, which seemed quite inaccessible at times for people who'd never encountered it before. So trying to make sure we could use kind of playful and fun activities to build on these climate conversations, making sure we were trying to engage through simple language that was jargon free and just had lots of visual elements as well. And yeah, sharing, especially through COVID times, doing more video engagement. So things like creating wildflower bombs and other kind of growing activities that we delivered sessions online that could then be shared amongst the community and used again and again by the schools in the area too. Next slide, please. So finally, yes, we hope we have a site that can then be used as an educational resource going forward and have a much wider impact kind of beyond the project itself, through sharing things like the videos that you've seen, also connecting to kind of other projects. Another project running in Greater Manchester at the moment is called Ignition, and all around financing, trying to work out ways of financing more nature-based solutions. And we're using the park as a demonstration site to show to people this is what you could take elements of this and take it home to your own community and take it to your own neighbourhood. So really trying to widen the reach and make this park impact be felt kind of across Greater Manchester. So that's my bit. So I'll pass over to Michaela now to talk a bit more about Our Rivers, Our City.
Thank you, Amy. I'm going to talk a little bit about how we've been hit during the COVID-19 pandemic as well, because a lot of those activities that Amy carried out with the community in West Gorton were what we wanted to also deliver as part of Our Rivers, Our City. And so Our Rivers, Our City is a larger scale, much larger scale project now, working right across Manchester City. And we have 3 river valleys running through Manchester. And this piece of work is aiming to establish strategies and action plans for each of those 3 river valleys. So we want to be working at both the strategic level and the neighbourhood level, just as Amy has described in West Gorton. If we can move to the next slide, please. Our approach will be similar to what you would expect, I imagine, for engaging the communities. To run a series of events and workshops, we wanted to do social media campaign and do a lot of the face-to-face work, such as the washing line exercise that Amy demonstrated and some of the things that you've seen in the other cities. But we were just starting our citizen engagement on Our Rivers, Our City when we were hit with the COVID-19 pandemic, and Manchester was locked down quite quickly so that we couldn't gather either outside or inside in any kind of groups, and we had to minimise our interactions with other people, as I'm sure you have to where you are. So we revisited our programme, and what we ended up delivering was a series of events and workshops, but all done online. So there are no pretty photos of people taking part in fun activities in this, I'm afraid, because we've all had enough, I think, of screenshots of faces and boxes. But we did a series, and I continue to do a series of online workshops that have actually worked really well for us to a large extent. And we've supplemented that with an online survey that has gone really far and wide. And on the survey, people were asked about what they saw as the challenges in their particular river valley, what the opportunities are for us to develop it and improve them, and also had the opportunity to put pins on maps where they thought particular issues and opportunities were, so that we got to map everything as well. Because normally we'd be spreading big maps across big tables with lots of coloured stickers, and of course we weren't able to do that. So we did run a social media campaign that worked really well for us, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. From the conversations we had at all levels, we pulled together a project bank of ideas that will sit alongside of the action plans. And these are ideas that communities can get along with themselves, without particular large amounts of funding, big funding bids or big projects, and that the communities can just get on, organise themselves. They might need a little bit of support from organisations or a little bit of money, but they can soon start to make a difference and then build their own confidence, and hopefully that will build some momentum and lead to lots of other people doing more work on the river valleys. We moved from opportunities and challenges in river valleys to think about, so what are the priorities here? Rather than end up with a long list of things, we want to make sure that we've got coherent action plans. So the first step of collating all the information from our citizens was to group them into priorities. So we went back out virtually to our participants and did some prioritisation exercises with them. And now we're at the stage of pulling together the action plans. And it is this what's testing those is this working at with both heads of both the strategic thinking about what are the high level priorities, but also the on the ground concern for our citizens and the on the ground opportunities in the neighbourhoods where they live. And trying to get the balance right between the two is quite tricky at times, but we do find the quantity of comments that we've had on the ground naturally influence what we agree as the priorities. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. So COVID floored us, really. We then found that quickly lots of people were getting used to the online work and the online world. And so the use of social media became really, really vital. And we found that we developed skills quite quickly, as did the rest of the world, through necessity, I think. But what concerned us was the fact that we had intended reaching out to all our citizens, whether they are already talking about the river valleys and nature or not. And perhaps they're not involved in those conversations yet and don't see the relevance to their lives yet. So we had endless conversations really about our social media strategy, because you'll see, interesting here, 185 responses around other cities and other cities that they thought might be getting their interactions with the river right and promoting the natural environment right. And they gave us lots of examples of cities where they thought that worked well. So clearly we were reaching those people who are already engaged in this type of conversation. But it's not the whole picture and it's not what we wanted to do. So those really local conversations are key. They might not give us our strategic priorities, but they create the volume of comments that influence those priorities. The other thing that I wanted to say on this is not to, so we spent a long time thinking, oh, we're not reaching the people we want to reach. But then not to give ourselves a hard time over that. Because those people we did reach in the workshops and the conversations they had were really informed conversation. They came from a place of really understanding the river valley world and the difference that nature is making. And we call those people gold dust people. There is, I often hear people talking about the usual suspects taking part in consultation and engagement. And I think that's quite demoralizing for those people, because those people who are quick to respond to a survey or who are quick to come to your workshop bring a wealth of understanding and connections and other people's opinions as well as their own. So we must value that, I think, whilst also alongside recognizing that to have the kind of the conversations we want to have with the people that we really want to have them with does take time. And it does take relationship building. And in a time of a pandemic, when you're not allowed to see people face to face, that becomes really problematic. So the next slide, please, is another example of how we used social media to stimulate a conversation. I'm sorry, you've got some notes there on the left that weren't properly hidden. But it was about the importance of social media here. So using different imaging, and we ask people to submit photos regularly, but using infographics like this that make the connections for people. We found we've got a really good response to this kind of imaging and messaging. Again, it's those people who are likely to respond to this, but they tell us things that we haven't thought of, and they make connections that perhaps we hadn't seen as well, and that's really important for us to do. So the next slide, please, Barbara. Finally, just throughout the project, because it's not been as we would ideally have liked it to have been insofar as the citizen engagement aspect of the project, we've been collecting our reflections as we've gone through at each stage and thinking about if this is going to continue, if we're going to have other periods where we can't meet people, what's engagement look like, and how do we respond to the new situation that we're all living in. So some of the reflections I just wanted to pull out are around the trusted relationship. So yes, people come forward quite quickly. There's a group of people that need a little push and a nudge to come forward, and we think we reached a lot of those as well. But those people that we seldom hear from, it's really tricky, and we need to find new and different ways of doing that. And I think through connections with other community leaders, we've found that using some of our elected leaders, our local councillors, has really reached people that otherwise we wouldn't have done. I think it's important to recognise that there is a sense of now people understand the green and blue world more than they've ever done, and they really valued that when they've had little opportunity to go out and talk to people and just feel normal. Going for an hour, a walk every day in the natural world has really helped people with their sense of well-being and their mental health. So a sense of now is the time to have these conversations and really get some momentum behind this kind of work. But also not to forget that there is some tension in these conversations as well between those who are really promoting the biodiversity angle and protecting spaces from people, so that those spaces really nurture the nature that we need. Whilst on the other side of the argument, we need to increase access to these spaces for more people and different people who perhaps aren't accessing them now. And there's a tension there between those two. We need to protect and preserve whilst also increasing access. And I think there was a lot of recognition in the work we did for green and blue spaces as being real assets. And this came in lots of different, described to us in lots of different ways. But those big showcase assets, the honeypot assets, can really help us push the agenda forward. So the West Gorton Community Park is really opening doors for other conversations and us bringing people across from other parts of Manchester to come and see this and understand what's possible and how we could do perhaps smaller scales, because there was a lot of funding behind this one, but perhaps smaller scale development in their neighbourhood. I think that's the conversation that we want to take forward. How do we make that achievable for communities? And I think that's the end of the slides. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Amy and Michaela. Really inspiring, and it's so impressive to see the work that you are doing. I fondly recall actually a guided tour along the River Medlock, once one of Britain's most polluted rivers, and now teeming with life after successive years of concerted restoration along its banks, and it was just incredible how nature can bounce back, can roar back when given half a chance. And I understand Groundwork was very much involved in that as well. So kudos to you and your team, and lots of really valuable lessons there on how to engage citizens, foster a collective sense of ownership, and spark interest among communities. And that seems to be central to the success of your efforts. We're now going to turn to our final presenter before we delve into the debate, the discussion. Allow me to introduce Rinske van Noordwijk, who is the founder of Greenwish. And Greenwish was established in 2003, I believe, with another of Rinske's colleagues, Ineke van Zanten. It aims to make more space for sustainable initiatives. And Greenwish directly facilitates initiatives, focuses on the cooperation between organizations such as governments, companies, and NGOs, and social initiatives. So we're going to hear now some insights, I believe, from the Netherlands. So over to you, Rinske.
Thank you very much.
And sorry, just to say, please do, participants, put your questions in the Q&A box. I believe they are being answered in real time. Thank you. Sorry, Rinske, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Russell. We heard some very, very interesting and important projects within the GrowGreen program. And I'd like to add something to it. The projects we have heard are projects, actually you can see two kinds of citizens' engagements. Can I have the next slide, please? You have beautiful examples heard in the GrowGreen project of citizens' cooperation in project started by local governments. And we are getting more and more trained in inviting people to join those projects. And that is very important. We need the wisdom of the crowd. We need the creativity. We need the manpower. And whilst doing that, there's another kind of citizen engagement. Many people have ideas of their own. Many people are concerned. Many people want to take action, their own action. And they ask organizations to join them. So it's another movement. In two of the projects of the GrowGreen program, I heard that citizens are invited to come with their own initiatives, but we can work on that. We can make circumstances better for people to take their own actions. And that is important because, can I have the next slide? That is important because we need the innovation. Excuse me, can you show the last slide once again? For instance, the photograph you see on this slide, it is a floating food farm in the harbor of Rotterdam. The next slide, you'll see those stones are made of sludge from canals. We have a lot of canals in Holland. And two girls from the University of Wageningen, they made a process in pressing stones from this sludge and using them directly. They have all kinds of holes so water gets through. And they do all kinds of projects with the combining canal cleaning and doing things with the sludge. And the next slide. This is a project on food trees, food forests. He organizes food forests through cities and surroundings with people with a distance from the labor market. All kinds of plots. He makes food forests, and it's a lot of. It takes a lot of manpower to make food forests as a business. So the combination of the social aspect and the food forests makes a good business plan for him. Next picture. This is a program, also a citizens initiative of through whole Holland. We saw people putting names next to little plants growing in cities to get more attention about the biodiversity in the cities, even like this in a pavement and in a stone world. Those are little examples, but I think in Holland we have about 20 to 40,000 citizens initiatives. Nobody asks them to take initiative, but they do themselves. and that would add a whole new world. So what we saw in the GrowGreen project is very, very important, but we should more emphasize the importance of the initiatives coming from people themselves. And at the moment we see in Holland about 30,000, but we believe after 20 years of facilitating citizens' initiatives, the potential is much, much, much bigger than that. And it is, it's not so very, can I have the one slide before? It's very difficult, one slide before. Yeah, we need to make more room, not only because of the innovation, but also because these initiatives are able to bind people that are seldom seen. I think it was Michaela, she talked about how difficult it is to involve groups that normally don't participate. Well, citizens' initiatives are able to, because they have a different image, there is more trust. Some people won't participate in initiatives taken by government, but they do when it is their own neighbor or somebody they know. So to involve more people in nature-based solution projects, we also need these citizens' initiatives. And another point I'd like to point out is that social initiatives add social cohesion. They start, for instance, with a nature-based solution project, but then people know each other in this project, and then it becomes easier to, for instance, share cars or together buy solar panels or whatever. So it starts with one initiative, but many of them become a tree of all kinds of initiatives because you get a kind of woven pattern of people who know each other, and from there on do extra things. Next slide, please. It is important to put more light on social initiatives because it is very difficult for people to set them up, and especially to maintain, to persuade, because well, a pilot project is not so very difficult, but if you want to maintain and grow and become strong and last, then you need the support of organizations. And that is where the problem comes in. This support, there's often a lack of support, not only financially. Financially, it is quite difficult. Sometimes you have a special budget for social initiatives, but that's also often not so very much. And most of the money goes to the organizations that share the same values and the same goals. And for these social initiatives to grow, there comes a time that you have to reconsider how you finance those goals. And that is something in the Netherlands that is very difficult. So we have budgets for social initiatives, but they are not enough. And it is not the real money that goes to these goals. We have to reconsider the way we finance getting the goals. It's very difficult also for people to get advice. When you start an initiative, you have to have so many skills. You have to be financially, you have to have knowledge of finance, communication, social media, your all kinds of expertise. And sometimes it's not there at the start, but you can learn a lot. So you have to have, you need to have more support also in the process of developing your initiative, and that's difficult to find. And many of the social initiatives, they face the same problems, but it's very difficult to unite the initiatives because they cover a broad range of social development goals, but they do not cooperate. There is no union. There is no. They're not united, and therefore the problems do not reach the politicians enough. And there's no level playing field yet. So it's difficult for social initiatives to thrive. Can I have the next slide, please? What we need to do from our point of view is, apart from all the good things we saw in the first presentations, is for organizations to realize that there are many people out there that have very good ideas, and that organizations will meet their goals faster if they facilitate the power of people. So don't do it all yourself, but make sure others can do it even better. And but that's a difficult. We are not there yet. There is not enough coalition and working together there. What we also need to do, we do not know enough about them, and they can show us so much. There is social innovation. There is people organize themselves differently. They finance themselves differently. They communicate differently. They come up with totally new ideas, and we need to harvest that. We need to use that for better policies as well. And the last thing I would say is, they show us that some of the ways we were doing things, or some of the methods we used, are old-fashioned. We need to stop. We need to learn to stop with what is no longer needed, and that would make more space for social initiatives. This might be it by now. I'd like to get in contact more with the public now, because probably there will be questions, but maybe I should stop here.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rinske, for that wonderful presentation with some really inspiring examples. I'm always so impressed at the Netherlands as a country. There's so much environmental innovation there. I know it's affiliated much, with the universities. They have strong environmental courses, but there are so many amazing, especially among the youth. There are so many young, passionate, idealistic, creative engineers, architects, activists, imaginaries who are really shaking up the status quo in the Netherlands. I, for one, visited the floating food farm in Rotterdam actually last summer. My partner is from Rotterdam, and I must say it was quite an experience. Just to elaborate a little on that project, essentially it's a dairy farm on a floating island, which is entirely powered by solar panels, if I recall correctly. The grass which is fed to the cows comes from Feyenoord Football Club. I met the owner, the founder of the floating food farm. Apparently, the grass mown on Feyenoord football turf is taken to the dairy farm and fed to the cows. So if you buy the milk, if you eat the cheese, you are I guess consuming a bit of that fabled wonderful ground. If you're a Feyenoord fan, of course, it might be poison to Ajax supporters, perhaps. But in any case, that's one example, I think, a really great example of the sorts of incredible innovation happening in the Netherlands. And I love the idea of highlighting plants and weeds that might otherwise be overlooked or even regarded as messy, and actually drawing attention to them, saying, no, this is also a life form. It has a place, it offers services and benefits to citizens. So thank you very much for that. I think perhaps before we delve into the questions, I just wanted to reflect on to zoom out and reflect on the broader context. We are in the midst of a biodiversity or planetary emergency. We know that 1 million species of plants and animals are at risk of extinction. Wildlife populations have declined some 68% since 1970. We know that the climate change crisis is growing out of control, frankly. 2020 was the hottest year on record, and cities are really feeling the heat. We know we also have a pollution crisis. Cities have ecological footprints that can be hundreds of times larger than their physical urban area. And we know that we have a public health crisis to put on top of that, to confound matters further. And this is resulting in an economic crisis. And perhaps one might even say a crisis of mental health and a crisis of loneliness. And what I think we've heard today is a counter narrative, which is one of hope and opportunity, that these citizen engagement initiatives, by bringing people together and creating a sense of shared ownership over neighborhoods, over local natural assets or nature-based solutions, and by bringing people out into the outdoors to meet one another, we can counter some of the great challenges that are upon us. And I think particularly, every one of these, biodiversity, climate change, pollution, public health, economics, mental health, loneliness, all these things, all these problems can be partially mitigated, at least through the citizens engagement strategies presented today. So congratulations to all the panelists, all the presenters. I, for one, really enjoyed listening to you. Now, I know there are questions pinging in the chat box. I'm just going to get the conversation going. I just want to ask, well, let me start actually with Iñaki, who very eloquently shared experiences from Valencia. Iñaki, you were talking about the need to engage, inform, to ensure co-design of interventions. What happens when you have NIMBYs? I don't know if you're familiar with that term. NIMBYs are not in my backyard.
Yeah.
They are people who generally oppose any change, and certainly we have a fair few of them in Edinburgh. That's for sure. I'm in Edinburgh. We often take it for granted that citizens know what's good for them, and they want more nature, and they want cleaner environment, more wildlife. But it's not always the case. It's not always the case. How do you deal with opponents to what are ostensibly progressive and pragmatic measures designed to improve the urban living environment, and often those minorities of NIMBYs can be very noisy, and they can be very well resourced, and they can offer staunch opposition to the very best laid of plans. So please, over to you, Iñaki. How do you deal with that, and have you encountered that in your work?
Yes, thank you for the question. That's a really difficult question, because it's something we are scared of it. We don't know if there is some people, we call them, you can call them NIMBYs, we call them trolls. But yes, we of course always have to manage with this kind of people that they think in their own interest, and it's something worthy. We understand that sometimes, for example, when we do these improvements, happens that maybe there is a part of the infrastructure of the park that is beside your house and you don't like it. We understand that, but the thing is, we always try to put these people together in a big group, in a workshop with all the people of the community, and we try to make them think about the common benefits of the project. When they think about the small problems they can have, we make, for example, a chart with where we evaluate the different benefits that we will going to have with this project in different subjects, and that makes them think about the other things. Sometimes they haven't think about. They don't have a bad view of the reality. They only have a part of the reality. So we make them work with a common view and with a big picture of what is happening in the space. And I have to say that usually it works. So people want, if people is participating, even when they are complaining, they are working for the community, and then and really they usually come together to the project if you can help them think in another way. I have to say that usually works more than what we before expected.
Okay, interesting. So often it's just a case of actually educating people. They may not necessarily be
Yeah.
aware. So I think of people who resist, for instance, the installation of cycle lanes. They may not be thinking about the fact that their cars are causing childhood asthma. And they sometimes need to be reminded of that.
Yeah.
Or they might oppose the creation of a green space. Maybe they don't recognize the full suite of benefits that
Yeah.
will be generated by that. So education is obviously critical.
Yeah, and sometimes they need to hear what their neighbor says, because they don't know what the other people are saying. They're alone sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I do recall if you live in a democracy, right, you can choose whether or not to vote. And if you don't vote, if you don't have your say, I guess it's your fault. So we need to encourage the people who want to see more nature-based solutions to become more vocal and actively engaged to ensure that they get what they want. I'm just going to turn out to Malgorzata, because you actually mentioned the importance of education. You held a number of workshops to develop the NBS adaptation, or the climate change adaptation strategy. Might you be able to explain how you managed to communicate something as complicated and overwhelming and daunting, frightening, frankly, as climate change, and something such as nature-based solutions, which is still quite an abstract term. It seems to be resonating across sectors, but how did you put that in layman's terms to ensure, how did you package it to ensure that it resonated with the public of Wrocław?
Thank you. Before I answer your question, I would like to comment on NIMBYs because actually we literally had NIMBYs because we were working on courtyards. So these were courtyards surrounded by houses where people were living. What I haven't said before is that these courtyards belong to the municipality, but residents treat these courtyards as their own. So we had these people saying, okay, but not here. I want this space to park my car. Do it somewhere else. So we had this NIMBYs, but as Iñaki said, it was good that we were in a bigger group with other citizens. So they had a chance to discuss. And there was always another group saying, okay, but I have children. I want to spend time with them. I need more greenery. And we can find another solution to find a place to park your car. And it was great, we didn't have to say this. Besides, this land belongs to municipalities, so they can do whatever they want to. They can fence it and make it paid parking lot. So we should be happy that they want to invest in this courtyard and make it green. And of course, create a space to park cars, but in a more organized way. So we were looking for some consensus, but yeah, we had this NIMBYs. But going back to your question, for example, when we had these first meetings with citizens and were trying to tell them what nature-based solutions are and their influence on climate change, we used our scientists, we used university we cooperate with. I see that Cornelia is with us today as well. So we joined our forces, but we also tried to find a very easy way to explain. So we prepared some inspirations showing that rain gardens can look really pretty and they are safe, and they can do both. So they can look nice, be a great part of landscape, but can also be a part of climate change adaptation. It was the same with rain borers. We showed examples and tried to well, we also used our landscape architects and other people and NGOs as well, so they can talk to people and explain that it's perfectly safe, that there are different solutions, that these rain borers can look nice and pretty and picturesque. So I think that they felt intimidated at first, but then once you show them examples and tell about other aspects, and well, and besides, we started asking, okay, you want to have boxes for bicycles, we can make them green. It's a very easy way. We can just have some plants that's gonna just go up and it's gonna be green. So we were trying to start with very different and very simple solutions. And I think that this idea that we invited citizens and we were planting together, it was also a way to convince people to these solutions. And what else? As I said before, we have some actions and municipal programs. So we start with children, and then children go to parents, and we have programs for schools. We have program for cultural organizations, and we also try to convince them to include these solutions into their investments. So we try to reach different groups of people step by step. It takes time. It takes money, it takes patience, but well, but there's no other way. So
yeah, I think that's a really good point. Working with schools, ensuring that children are growing up familiar with nature and recognizing its benefits. And I think the curricula taught today is immeasurably better than it was perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. So I expect that, and I see great hope actually in the promise of youth as they enter the workplace, as they assume roles of leadership. I think we will see that kind of broad whole of society green enlightenment that we've all been working towards. But yeah, working with children is absolutely fundamental. You mentioned investment, and that actually is reflected in the Q&A box. Someone's asked about financing of NBS. Charlotte has asked about financing NBS projects and how to ensure the sort of long-term sustainability, the maintenance of that. So perhaps our colleagues from Manchester might want to comment on that. How do you ensure that the financing is sustainable?
Yeah, if I knew that, I wouldn't be here. I'd be somewhere sunny and on a beach with lots of money behind me. It's a great question, isn't it? I think, there are things that we can do to influence. For me, the question's got two parts, actually. One is about financing it full stop. And I think Amy referenced another European project that Manchester's taking part in, looking at innovative ways of financing nature-based solutions to climate change. But that's really focused around perhaps bringing together those who are going to be investing in the public realm, those people who are going to be investing in large improvement work programs, and bringing them together so that there is a pooled pot of money and that nature features heavily in all of those improvement programs. And that's not what we're talking about here, I don't think. So the second part of the question is around supporting the citizens to do it for themselves, but also making sure that those agencies that do have finance recognise that and support that. So I think the whole focus we have on co-design, bringing citizens together with landscape architects, with builders, with anybody who's designing any kind of improvement space, that co-part of that is really important. And we need to make sure, oftentimes I've seen that described as helping citizens understand what constraints the organisations have. But actually we need to flip that on its head, and we need to make sure that co-design, co-production is about the agencies understanding what citizens can do for themselves and supporting them to do things for themselves where they want to do them for themselves. So our questions going into a community project are always, what can you do? What can you do if we give you a little bit of help? And what do you need us to just do for you? And differentiating those three things, I think, is really important. So when it comes to financing, what can you do for yourself? What do you need a little bit of finance to help with? And what actually is beyond your control at the moment and you need other people to do? So I think that bringing together of perspectives is the key.
Thank you very much. Amy, would you like to add to that? Or we can look at the chat box. I see that there are a few questions coming in. So I think we've spoken about the hard to reach groups of people. Perhaps that was addressed by, well, partly through the presentations, but certainly by Iñaki. But maybe Amy, might you like to comment on that? I know you've been using social media a lot to reach out to the masses. And social media, of course, has its pros and cons. And you did share some insights, tips and tricks. It seems that you've been very successful actually using social media. So might you want to elaborate on that for us and maybe identify the strengths and limitations of such an approach?
Yeah, I think, well, definitely. With social media, you're kind of reaching, I guess, different audiences to those you'd reach in person. It's obviously a good way of like having a broader reach and maybe reaching people like a wider audience. But then, I don't know, sometimes more difficult to, I guess, have a more kind of in-depth conversation around things. You can like pick up certain elements of ideas from people, but maybe less of those kind of wider conversations around it. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not a social media expert.
Okay, do any of the other panelists want to chime in there on the matter of social media? I mean, we talk about citizen engagement. Is social media actually, you know, does it cut the mustard? Is it real social engagement, citizens engagement, or will it only ever just be a partial snapshot of a minority and a vague snapshot at best? Or is it an essential part of the new world, the digital engagement, that we need to have our fingers on the pulse, and social media gives us a wealth of information that is not available elsewhere? I'd be interested to hear your views on that. Perhaps,
sorry,
yes, please.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
Russell. I think the question is, it has a role to play.
Yeah.
Amy, I wondered if it's worth here describing the Eco Streets project that has spun off from all of this work, because you've had to rely on social media in the promotion of an engagement piece of work.
Yeah, so the Eco Streets project we've been running through the other project we mentioned, Ignition. So that's all around communities being able to kind of design projects for themselves and us to help facilitate delivering them. So we've been running kind of online competition where groups can submit different ideas around what kind of MBS-based projects they'd like to run in their own communities. And then we work with a few winners to help them formalise their design with our like landscape architects input, and then actually carry out the works itself, and also support with additional training around monitoring the impact of that and how they'd go about maintaining it long term to help it be more sustainable. So that's it. I mean, yeah, entirely come from social media, because we're working kind of across all of Greater Manchester in COVID times. So that's been completely reliant on engaging people that way, but trying to support that engagement through additional like workshops for people. So we're not just reaching people that already know about MBS, we're also helping educate around what it means by kind of sharing opportunities for communities to come up with their own ideas and then help kind of build on them with some NBS features. So that's what we've been running at the moment.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. That's the Ignition project you mentioned. That's another Horizon 2020 project, is it? Okay, great. Excuse me. So I mean, you mentioned the opportunity for citizens to come up with their own ideas, and I know this was actually central to the presentation of Rinske, some of the examples that she provided. So Rinske, I'm wondering, innovation is absolutely essential. Clearly, this is a new and emerging concept, nature-based solutions in the urban environment. How can governments, local governments especially, help to fuel innovation? You mentioned the importance of businesses, of course. The private sector has a role, an interface with citizens, but how can local governments? Because I think the target audience of this particular webinar is, of course, city officials. But how can local governments almost fan the flames of creativity to facilitate that sort of, or to create an environment that is conducive to ideas big and bold actually materializing in the real world? Is it just a case of providing financing? Is it a case of making vacant land available? What sort of measures can the government, local government, play to support that?
They can do a lot. First of all, it's very important to invite people straight away. So to share the problem and to invite people to come with their own ideas to solve it. And one of the things we saw were money as a way to make that thing going. But it is not enough. And it is also quite difficult to organize. What we did for the government in Holland was to make it was very accessible, very accessible for people to start a project. We had the money, we could give people €1,000 as a starter for their own ideas, and this was to restore nature projects. So it was all nature focused, not only nature in cities, but also nature outside cities. But we invited people to start with their own projects, and we did not ask them to come up with large plans and paperwork, but just put your name and your plan on a website so everybody could see what your plan was. And after half a year, you should put on this website, what did you do and what were the effects? And everybody could see this website. So there was a lot of visibility, and it made people, there came all kinds of connections and things like that. So it was a very easy way to start up all kinds of projects. And what makes it more valuable is when organizations, local governments, for instance, pick out those who think they can cooperate with. So it is an invitation for organizations to join those projects started by citizens. And so that is one way. But it all starts with the mindset that there are a lot of people out there with lovely ideas that would like to start their own projects, but nobody asked, and nobody gave this push. And so, yeah, it starts with that, with the curiosity to want to know what kind of ideas there are in society that need this little bit of push to start growing.
Great. So it's about facilitating, supporting, nudging, allowing people to make their dreams reality. Absolutely. Yeah. I have lots of big ideas for making Edinburgh greener and wilder, but I don't quite know how to put them into practice. Who do I meet? Who do I How do I get organized? You know, these are questions that are not obvious to answer. So I think that the local government can certainly play a role in supporting citizens to meet one another and to meet like-minded individuals. Absolutely. So thanks very much for that. And I just look into the chat box or to the question and answer box, and I see a few have come through. Someone, Morton, is asking, concerning health and well-being, did you monitor on this subject? And if so, how? So does anyone wish to tackle that? Monitoring health and well-being. Any of the panelists?
Yes, we have in GrowGreen, there is a part of the team that is making with some KPIs, with some indicators. They are measuring the health and the well-being and also climate information. And we have done it before, and we will do it afterwards. And we will check if we have done something good, but we don't know yet. So we have some technical indicators associated with the climate change, and some also social indicators. That's the thing. So yes, we are in the meanwhile.
I think it's a really fascinating area of research, and particularly now that so many governments are cash strapped as a result of the economic fallout of COVID-19. And we need to be looking increasingly to preventative healthcare. And part of that is nature, right? We need to ensure that there are green spaces for people to exercise, green ways to facilitate active travel, trees to mop up pollutants and clean the air. And I think governments are beginning to recognize this, that actually one of the great economic benefits of investing in nature is the health dividend for citizens. I'm just going to look back at the Q&A, and unless anybody else wants to comment on that particular issue, monitoring health. Okay, do chime in if you want.
Hello. I was just going to say that, yeah, West Gorton Community Park's being monitored by the University of Manchester, like over a number of years. So they kind of created their own tool called Mohawk to monitor health and well-being. So it's like things like noticing the nature around you, or people interacting with each other, and like enjoying the space. So all these kind of different ways of noticing your environment and things like that. So the University of Manchester kind of go out to the park and like take note of how people are interacting with the space. So that'll help to kind of feed back on how health and well-being has changed over time as well.
Okay, wonderful. I would like to know about culture. So if I may indulge as the moderator, I can do what I like, right? So I'm just going to indulge in asking a question about culture. In order to reach the scale of the audience required, with the urgency to bring about the transformative change that we often speak of, clearly we need to work more and more hand in hand with culture makers. So poets, musicians, writers, artists, people who are naturally adept at capturing hearts and minds, moving hearts and minds. And I saw in some of the images, at least, that in several of the examples, you've been doing exactly this. I draw inspiration from the London National Park City movement, where they throw launch events in art schools, and they really try to get beyond the environmental sector to reach the mainstream of society. I would love to know what experiences, of any, you have with engaging artists. I mean, I saw some of the beautiful graphics Groundwork Manchester shared, but perhaps you could speak more specifically to that. Perhaps at the workshops, did you have local artists and musicians and creatives coming to the fore? Would anyone like to speak to that?
Yeah, I can, although it's in planning, so it's a bit of a cheat answer. I'm sorry, Russell. So we haven't yet, but what we are doing, we're working with a musical ensemble who are coming to Manchester, so some of our real poor neighbourhoods, and asking local people just to record the water near them and they're going to be creating a musical piece of everybody's recordings of water and playing along to it and inviting everybody to attend in one of our big parks. So doing an open presentation performance of the musical piece that's going to incorporate the recordings. So I'm not creative and artistic in the slightest, but I'm really excited to see what happens with that.
Great example, thank you. Any from Wrocław or Valencia, or perhaps Netherlands, that you might want to share?
I know that in one of the courtyards there were a musical concert organized by people living there. So in our case, I guess we just gave citizens space, the right space, and now they are using it for their needs. So I know that there were concerts because I've seen some photos. So I don't know, perhaps they will take an initiative.
Okay, thank you. Please, participants, there are still 61 people in this call. I know you have burning questions to ask. There's still time for a few more. Do put them in the chat box, in the Q&A box, please. But perhaps whilst you're thinking up your questions, one idea or notion that I would like to present to the panel is about the human rights dimension. You might have seen a lot of organizations now are talking about environmental justice. And this pertains to childhood asthma, people dying prematurely from air pollution, but also the psychological distress of noise pollution, being subjected to noise pollution, of being deprived or denied of nature's benefits, the psychological benefits, the physical and mental health benefits. So there is now, it seems, worldwide a growing recognition of the fundamental human right to inhabit a clean, safe and wildlife-rich environment, regardless of your race, gender, postcode, whether you're rural or urban. Everybody has a fundamental right to inhabit that world. So how are your municipalities or organizations and governments, how are you actually working to advance that right? And have you noticed a sea change in public attitudes, perhaps during the COVID crisis? Have you noticed people demanding more nature in their lives as a result of the global pandemic and the successive lockdowns? How have attitudes changed? That would be my question. And then I think there are one or two others coming in. Sorry, I'm a bit slow to read. Oh, no, there aren't. Please, participants, I demand your questions. Thank you.
I think there are some questions that are not being answered and can be connected with this one you have done.
Okay.
I think Charlotte is asking about the barriers of the trust of the citizens towards each other and towards the project organizers. And I think yes, the point here is when we work in European projects, we are working in top-down projects. Mainly, what happens is that when we start working, we have already sent to the commission our project with all we have to do. We want to do. We come back and we say, let's start working and let's explain these people what are we going to do in the neighborhood. But nobody has asked them. So that's a barrier. So trying to make these top-down projects bottom-up projects is our big effort, and I think Margosat and Amy will say the same. And but what happens now is that before people was used to do that. The government is coming here and doing their stuff, but now they are asking for better places because they are due to the COVID. Of course, they are in the houses. They are all the time seeing what's happening in the neighborhood, and they are asking now for more rights, for more power in the decisions. And it's not a barrier, but it's something that can help us if we have if we manage well the process. We can tell them, we have this money, we want to do this project, what do you think? And then start doing a middle, not top down, not bottom up, but middle term project when we work together. And I think that's the future of the urban planning. Not we have an idea, you have an idea, let's work together. And I think that's what we have to do is that thing. There are some bottom up projects that can have their own way, and we can leave them working. But these European projects must work with these directions together.
Absolutely, and it's not just about ticking boxes and trying to, appease the masses and say, oh yes, we have consulted you, therefore we can push through this plan. It's actually a valuable opportunity for local governments to, as Rinske pointed out, to tap into that repository of amazing ideas, of innovation, of passion and idealism. It's an opportunity for local governments to greatly enhance the quality of the decisions and the plans that they seek to implement. Mm-hmm. So let's now turn back to unless any of the other panelists would like to chime in, please do.
Can I?
Yes, please, Rinske, please.
What we see is an increase of projects around nature. And that has a direct relationship with COVID. People are asking the question, who owns the ground? We want to have more nature, but who owns the ground? And at the moment, we see at least 4 initiatives of people joining force and buy agricultural land and turn it into nature. And there are no nature organizations involved. It's just concerned citizens joining force and buy land to confirm it into nature. And I think that is a sign. It has to do with COVID, because we have not enough green space for breathing, and we couldn't go on holidays and so on. So there's a much more pressure on nature reserves in Holland, and but this is direct result. People are literally buying ground to confirm it into nature.
Thank you, Rinske, for that. And I think that sentiment probably resonates with the other panelists as well across Europe. I see there's another question here from Morten. He's asking, I work in an area with many different ethnicities. Do you have some experience or good ideas working across very different cultural barriers? Now, I think virtually every one of the cities presented today is multicultural. I know Manchester is a bit of a melting pot. So is Valencia, and I imagine that Wrocław is too. So any one of you, I think, would be well placed to respond to that.
Shall I start us off?
Go for it.
And then other people obviously can add in. I think we rely a lot on faith organisations and places of worship to reach into some communities that perhaps we're not very strong relationally with. And we also rely on other community leaders who already have really strong connections with some of the different groups of people living in Manchester, if we don't already have those connections. And of course, that comes through us as an organisation and our approach to how inclusive we are as an organisation and how we are seen in the community and the work that we do in the community. So it starts with us, and then we work through relationships that we have. And where we don't have relationships that we need, we find community leaders that can help us. But one of the points that I think just goes back to a previous question on our rights and thinking about justice and respect, I think. And I'm glad that Morten raised the question around culture, because we're starting to have more and more conversations about our own privilege. And in our design work, we design from within what we already know. We design from what we're aware of, and we design from what we've done previously or we've heard of. And if all our designs are based on, for example, working with Manchester's white communities, our designs and our inspiration that we create for further conversations will be based on what our white communities value. And I know there's more research coming out about this, and there's a good piece of work on the Olympic Park in London, that different people from different ethnic backgrounds value different types of green infrastructure differently. And we're just in the middle of that conversation now on what that means for us. So it's traditionally in our engagement work, we've done lots of things to work with some of the communities that we're not strong with. But actually, this is a really important area and particularly current at the minute.
Absolutely, it's so interesting, and there's also a gender dimension to this as well, isn't there? Whereby, you know, spaces that might feel safe for the average man might not necessarily be feeling, they might not be perceived the same way by a woman. You know, you think of the need for lights and perhaps you know, high visibility. It's important, I think. So would anyone else like to comment on that before we wrap up? I see we have just a few minutes left. Okay, then let me conclude. I mean, where do I begin? There was so much food for thought today. Thank you, firstly, to all the panelists for really outstanding contributions. I personally learned a lot. I now have very itchy feet, and I want to get out of Edinburgh and go and visit these beautiful green spaces in and around your cities. I must also thank the participants for attending. Great to have you with us, and thank you for your questions and actively engaging. Thank you to Barbara and Julia, my colleagues who have been basically behind the scenes, setting all this up, making sure that the technical aspects ran smoothly. So in conclusion, I need not repeat all the key messages that have emerged, but I think for me, an old adage springs to mind, which is, I hear, I forget. I see, I remember. I do, I understand. I think it's a Chinese proverb, so they say, who knows? But that, I think, is at the heart of the rationale for citizens' engagement. If we want to bring about the great green transition that we so desperately need, if we are to, you know, have shared prosperity within the limits of Earth's living systems, then we need nothing less than the whole of society to get involved. And that starts on the ground with projects like those we have heard today. We need to listen. We need to listen carefully. We need to interpret. We need to put into practice those ideas that come from the people who really matter, the people who are poised to be affected by climate change, by green space deprivation. They're the ones whose voices need to be heard. And we need to listen to them not just on a one-off occasion, but rather on an ongoing basis. That is, I think, the democratic duty of anyone, of all powers that be, in fact. So without further ado, I think we shall close this meeting. But thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed it. We have actually 2 minutes, so I'm going to go around. I'm going to put each of the panelists on the spot. I'm going to ask you to surmise your outlook, how you're feeling, in one word. So let's start. Iñaki, one word, sum it up.
Much work to do. We have a lot of work to do.
Okay, Michaela.
I'm energized.
Energized, good, glad to hear it. Amy?
Inspired.
Thank you. Malgorzata?
I wanted to say inspired as well.
Oh, it's okay. Rinske? You're muted, Rinske.
Trust and hope.
Trust and hope. Well, the winds of change bring hope and opportunity, and I've seen plenty of that today. So thank you so much. Enjoy your afternoons, and we look forward to keeping in touch. And if any of you are interested, do follow up. The GrowGreen website will have a web story. The webinar has been recorded and will be posted there as well shortly. And do keep abreast of the calendar on the website for future events. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you.